What is the purpose of all personalities in existence? Before I wrote down the title for this episode, before the title arose to me, I wondered about what would be the most advanced state. I was thinking about the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, and I was thinking that if through the Mr.Within archetype I could design something similar, what would it be? I thought about something, and I thought of calling it the Four Advanced Truths. And I was wondering about what is the simplest way to explain to a human being, or to comprehend the human archetype when it comes to living the lifetime. And I thought about, if I was to explain, as if for a moment I thought, let's say I had met myself for the first time, how would I explain myself to that self? The Four Advanced Truths. Let's say the Four Advanced Mr.Withinian Truths. Or I shouldn't call them truths. Let's call them the four advanced strategies. Mr. Within's four advanced strategies. This is really something I should use the notepad for, but for this episode I'm not going to use it. But the idea is that when we look at the dimensions of the human being, if I was to explain it simply, I thought about, okay, there's an individual visible dimension, there's an individual body, and then there's an individual mind, an individual invisible dimension. I considered that, okay, now let's look at it from a collective body and a collective mind. Now later on I'll speak about the idea of the soul and what I mean by the subtitle. But the intent is to open up the question, what is the purpose of all personalities right now? Why are we all existing here? Why are our minds active in a world? And what do we do? In relation to the potential grander scheme of things. So I was thinking there's an individual body, there's an individual mind, now there's a collective body and there's a collective mind. An individual visible life, an individual non-visible, invisible life. A collective visible life and a collective invisible life. The title of this episode is relating to the fourth strategy, which and the reason I'm explaining this is pretty much I'm like, okay, what's a way I could turn into quadrants the possibilities of intelligence in a world? And these four modalities suffice. I find that if a human being finds the most advanced strategy they can in these four contexts, It's pretty much the resolution of what we can consider an advanced being, an advanced human life. When I think about the individual body, this is everything that has to do with our physical, biological existence. This means what is pretty much as a strategy, it's like what's the strategy to the individual physical life, or what is the purpose of an individual physical existence. For me, the individual body, just by the mere observation of it, its purpose is to be. The physical body, even though it leads to motion, and then that motion is interpreted through memory as mindhood, but in actuality, the strategy to an individual body is for it to stick around as long as it can, or in some sense, to stay as long as required. When I think about the purpose of the individual mind, this becomes something completely different. But before I go to the individual mind, I'll say this. The strategies to the individual body, let's say biological survival. Now we have the collective visible life, and this is pretty much the life of the species. And it's our collective life. Collective visible life. We are very privileged to have access to a collective visible life. This song has vocals in it, guys. I don't know what to do with that. Anyways, to continue. The strategy to our collective visible life is pretty much the advancement of civilization, the ability to use the opportunity of the members of a species existing. There's a feeling one has when they are among 8 billion other human beings, and there's a feeling one has where it's as if imagine you were the last of your species. Imagine in movies, and like Hollywood movies, I don't know what it was. I think it was a movie where Nicolas Cage was in it, but pretty much it's like the last 2 human beings are taken by extraterrestrials to another planet. So I'm saying imagine, not imagine, but try to feel the value of the presence of a species. Pretty much we're trying to find the most advanced approach to our physical, individual, biological existence, and we're trying to think of the most advanced approach to our collective physical existence. For now, that can be translated as a strategy towards the advancement of the species. Now, then we have the invisible mind, or the individual mind and the collective mind to deal with. The individual mind would be something like asking, what is the purpose of my personality? What is the purpose of why my body leads to a mind? Or what is the purpose of my mind, my individual mind? Now, this is, on some level, it's filtered to the purpose of the individual mind or one's invisible life. Pretty much the mind is tasked with maintaining the individual body, but it's also tasked with creative individual exploration. Creatures that don't notice their beyond their body. They are actually enchanted by instinct. Beings that notice beyond their body, the scope of it's as if they have at least stepped out of one simulation. The title of What is the Purpose to All Personalities is wondering what is the purpose of the collective mind? What is the purpose of our collective invisible life? What is the greatest strategy, and why is it? Like, for example, we have an explanation for biology, cosmological circumstances, and light constantly, the earth getting a tan in the sun. It led to the arrival of conscious, intelligent beings. Or let me say it this way. The world created the body. Therefore, the explanation of what is the purpose of the body goes also back to what is the purpose of the world. I wonder pretty much, why is my body here? The story of evolution suffices. I wonder about, why is my mind here? And I realize the intent of the mind is to activate the body. The mind is another way of saying an unknown attention, an unknown intelligence can activate potential. Consciousness cannot direct the cosmos, but it can direct itself. We can't change the world, but we can change ourselves. And when we change ourselves, our inner world takes shape in accordance to that. You see, life is so remarkable, so incredible, that from multiple angles we could look at it and it still makes sense. It still has some sort of interaction and relationship, because really, what is intelligence? Intelligence is motion. For a human being to wonder about what its purpose is like simultaneously wondering what is the purpose of a universe existing. Consciousness is the permission of controllable existence. For me, I ask myself, okay, why is my mind active? Why is there a mind here? The mind is to be aware of the body, but to also use the body. So there's a utility factor, right? Things are in relation to a context, or whatever concept has value in accordance to a certain context. The two basic contexts that we find in philosophy and psychology is that of, you can say, pretty much motion and stillness, and then silence and noise. When I wonder about existence, through stillness, there's a perfect meaning. Why? What is the purpose of my body? It is to be my body. It is to exist. But when I think about what is the purpose of my mind is in some sense it's like compiling a compilation of various moments and instances where the body is relevant. You know what's fascinating? You know, a person can say, I remember a dream I had, right? Let's say they had a dream last night. They could say, I remember a dream I had. But nobody says, I can remember a deep sleep I've had. But it's existentially happening. Sleep is the proof that reality is present even though it is not present to itself. I want to see a species move towards such an ability that it finds the greatest strategy to its individual body. It finds a greatest strategy to its individual mind. It's another way of saying what is the best thing your body can do, what is the best thing your mind can do, and then what is the best thing the body of your species can do, what is the best thing the mind of your species can do. And I feel that if a human being just has the intent to look at these angles of perception, to wonder about what the most advanced state in these four contexts are, for me, enlightenment had a fascination, right? I remember, getting introduced to Vedanta, the Upanishads, yoga, the concept of moksha, nirvana, self-realization, ultimate liberation, it's like true salvation, all of these ideas. And these ideas were fascinating, and they still are to some degree fascinating for me. But if I was to say in my immediate conscious vicinity, what is the most incredible, like the glow of what vision? It's like, imagine the person's life is a series of visions, out of which one of those visions has a drawing fascination more than the rest. It's like we need to use our body to prove to ourselves that there is a mind. If a person cannot control their body, it's very hard to say what kind of mind is there, right? There's this idea of, in a theological context, it's the concept of possession. In a non-theological context, the idea of free will is leads to the notion of ownership. You see, the fascinating thing about human intelligence is not that it's just multidimensional, but the relationship of these different dimensions of one's intelligence. On some level, we want to know, how does the self interact with the world, and how does the world interact with the self? For the longest time in human history, creaturehood has had more of an evolutionary memory of actually being controlled by the world. What does that mean? That means the world possessed the limits of the behavior of the animal. The environment defined and programmed the behavior of the animal. The creature that had limbs that could walk on the earth, that could roam the earth. So it's a relationship of self with world and world with self. The physical world possessed the mobility of our physical self. But something incredible happened through the advent of consciousness, through the entrance of self-awareness, was that an invisible world could know that it was being a visible self in a visible world. You see, an invisible self arose. the relationship of transcendence became how our minds noticed our body. People are wondering if they're looking for spiritual experiences. Guess what? The most divine experience is how the moment has a possibility to hold anything, how the attention has been even drawn. You see, to wonder about the purpose of personality, the person is like questioning the system that is bringing meaning, right? It's like wondering why bodies are in the void, and it's as if the world had something to do, the physical world had something to do with it. But then we wonder about why the mind is here, and the fascinating thing is that the mind is convincing itself through the body before it actually experiences a purity of itself. For me, I have wondered about religion as if it's a code to a sort of universal secret. Pretty much every ideological system I see, it translates to me geometrically, just like how matrix codes were on a screen. So really what an idea is a geometrical position. Now, based on a dynamic context or based on a static context, the meaning is different. Right now, my eyes are closed and I'm speaking. I don't want to take out the notepad, so I just hope that the viewers can visualize or at least get a piece of paper and, kind of create your own blueprint of the concept I'm sharing. Really what it is I'm saying the purpose of individual physical life, reproduction, continuity, experiential accumulation, that makes sense. But when I think about the mind, like, what is the purpose to my own mind? And then what is the purpose to the mind of my species? Why are 8 billion creatures that biologically look the same in the same place, right? Why are there 8 billion conscious agents in one room? And then what is every person doing? Like, let me tell you something incredible. Imagine right now, to whoever you are listening to me, try to imagine the edge of the world you see, the observable universe. Right? We're all senses of self in the world. We're conscious moments of self in a world. So I'm asking the viewers, whoever you are, just close your eyes right now or keep it open, whatever you like, but try to imagine the edge of the cosmos, the edge of everything that is in the observable universe. Try to visualize how far and vast space is. Try to visualize how the earth is like a mote in a sunbeam, in a light beam. So what I'm trying to say is that gives you a sense of like, oh my God, the world is so big. There's so much more to the world that we can't see its edge. So similarly, when it comes, it's like a similar feeling when a person wonders about how many physical positions where personality or an unknown sequencing of the free will is leading to personality. That means whoever you are, try to imagine how many different type of people from the beginning of time till now, from the beginning of the species till now, have lived. How many different type of behaviors through genetical formats, right? Because what is genetics, right? Terence McKenna, in one lecture, he was saying it as if it's gene swarming. So what is going on is that we are right now, we think we're just a human being in our house or home, but in actuality, we are part of this very long system of passing the genetical torch. So what it means is that we are somehow the ancient world's continuity into the present. That's the value of the body. The body is like an ancient journeyer that has made it to the present to some degree. So just the fascination of not just 8 billion biological human beings, but all the types of human minds that have existed so far. So that is also unfathomable. That is actually magnificently unfathomable. You know, a person doesn't know how their ancestors' mind, let's say, looked like, but they can kind of tell how their ancestors' body looked like based on their genetics. Right? We don't. So what it is like this biological, let's say, this genetical program is branching out through time, through, let's say, the strategy of reproduction, and as it's doing this, or the way it's doing this, is that it's like from this genetical. Imagine a tree that blossoms, where like a blossom tree or something. So what I'm trying to say is that I feel nature is so smart that it doesn't waste anything. Right? Like if a person leaves food out, after a while it goes rotten, but that's just showing the intelligence of bacteria. Do you know bacteria is smart? It's like bacteria doesn't waste food, but human beings do. So what I'm trying to say is that just like food goes rotten, it's as if everything is being used up by whatever intelligence is capable of using it. So when I think about the human intelligence, when I think about all the physical bodies of my ancestors or my lineage as a by physical human being, I also think about the type of minds and how in one lifetime, think of how many personalities or how many modes of our own personhood we traveled. So like in a day, let's say a person experiences, based on the new stimulus in the environment, they experience different senses of ourself. That means, imagine the brain from the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep is simulating itself through archetypes of identity. Now imagine that let's say throughout the day the brain simulated a sense of self in a world like, I don't know, let's say 1,000 times, or let's say 500 times, or I don't know, like a sort of number in that range. Okay. Or I'll give you an example. Imagine an interviewer who has to interview 10 people in one day. That interview would be as if 10 versions of him in the moment. What I'm trying to say is, like, let's just, for example's sake, just so I can speak about it, let's say the brain simulates itself 200 times throughout the day before it sleeps. I'm not even counting moments where we blink and the whole world is gone, but then our eyes open and it's there. I'm not considering, like, let's say nanosecond simulations of self, but that could be considered. But anyways, so throughout the day, throughout one day, how many variations to our own self's ability to move in a world do we experience? Now imagine that for a lifetime. Imagine somebody who lives 100 years. 100, what's the number? It would be like the person living 100 days. Imagine okay, let me. You know what it would be? It would be something around 3,650,000 simulations of self in a lifetime. Simulations of a sense of self in a lifetime. That's only if there's 100 simulations of self from the beginning of the day till the moment our eyes close. So imagine each of your ancestors before, like from the moment they were born to the moment they died, they got around 3,650,000 versions of themselves. So on some level, sure, our ancestors lived a life, but what is the deeper genetical program doing by providing our ancestors with minds and senses of simulation? And you know what it is? This is the bizarre thing about nature. Nature is cultivating mastery. We think on some level it's just the evolution of the human being, but nature is training through a sort of genetical presentation of various human personalities in the moment. So the purpose of personality on some level can be seen as nature's way of crystallizing its own force. So if the world was here first, then the self is being used for the world to realize something. But if it's the other way around, if there was a self and then there was a world, then the self is using the world to comprehend the self again. Like the lowercase s self is using the world to comprehend its, let's say, higher case s of a self. So to some degree, it's like we can give nature credit and say, all right, nature's doing something beyond the individual human lifetime's ability to comprehend. So by man just being natural, he's assisting, let's say, the divine natural plan, right? But at the same time, this is just kind of too easy of an approach. Like, I understand a lot of people in spiritual communities, they're like, love oneness. Like, I could totally, be one of those, people who just says, hey, everybody, love each other. But let me tell you what the issue is. The oneness that is found through, let's say, the archetype of divine love is a dehumanizing love. So it's like, in order to have a human love, one requires to have a separation of the human from the world. But if somebody thinks everything is oneness and they're loving reality that way, it's as if you have just taken away your humanness so that you think the moment is the only truth. In a mystical context, it's really the taste of the person. There was a phase in my life where I felt the past was defining me. Then there was a phase of my life where I'm like, okay, the present is where the definitions are coming from. But recently I have realized it's like, what about the future? Because honestly, when I wonder about it's like this is actually not an easy thing for me to say, but when I think about why do I exist, really the future is the reason. The future has been my guardian angel so far, which is kind of bizarre. It's like somebody was saying, destiny, that's been, when a person becomes conscious of their destiny, it's as if the future self has made contact with. The personality from Carl Jung's sense of, explanation. The idea of a persona is that the persona is a mask. It's a technology. So think of it this way: a biological program on the surface of the earth. It is using self-awareness to generate itself as an idea, and then giving the steering wheel to the persona. So what it is like a biological intelligence is simulating an ideological identity for its biological intelligence, then giving full power. Do you understand? It's like I completely understand why back in the day in the ancient mythos they treated Earth as Mother Earth, like they called Earth Mother Earth. And let me tell you why, because it's like the mother has brought forth the existence, but then is there to witness the freedom, right? Like, really, what separates, I would say to some degree, this is not like a absolute thing I'm saying, but it's as if the father cares for like the physical existence of their child more, and I would say the mother cares for the mental existence of it, cares for the child's mind more than the father, because on some level to be a man is kind of like to be the initial force in the moment, right? But the nature of the mind is that the mind is the after viewer of the initial force to some degree. I think this is one of the most incredible, titles I've come up with for an episode. The purpose of all personalities, the purpose of why our brains are simulating movies where we are characters and overlaying this inner realm of eventhood upon a physical reality. Like nature is doing something genius, right? And consciousness is that. Consciousness is like the genius of nature. Do you know the remarkability of how there was even a capability of something to remember its past sense of self? We it's some people say, it's like I suffer because of my past, right? But just the ability, just the evolutionary ability to notice we have a past and we're in a present and there's a future. This is like an advanced state of being, Some animals in nature, like there has been times where I've thought about like group minds as poetically like invisible clouds moving all the creatures in them. Do you know? Like if somebody asks me, Mr. Within, in your walks in nature, like what kind of beings have you seen? Because I walk a lot in nature, right? Recently, not as much as I'd like to, but I would say I've had many walks in nature alone, right? And in those walks, like sure, there's physical beings. There's like physical beings in the forest in the sense of like, squirrels, birds, and whatever. But there has been moments where I have felt there are non-physical spaces that are conscious and free will, a sort of will and determination flows through them. So we right now are living in a, let's say, type of reality where, let's say, even the spiritual person is living in a type of reality where they feel they are a soul, right? But what if the moment has a soul? What if space is a subtler body for an unknown soul, for an unknown mover of the moment? would say I have seen. I shouldn't say seen, but I have had experiences with space being alive beyond the biological framework. And it's just that, like, think of it this way: imagine an ant imagine a group of ants that are on a table, and let's say a bunch of human beings are watching these ants. It's like, imagine one of those ants, like, they only see ants, but at some point one of the ants notices that a human being is watching it, and the human being has complete control on how to move the moment. So it's like an ant. Imagine there's an ant on a human being is at their desk, and an ant climbs onto their notebook, so the human being can move the notebook and the ant's reality would be relocated. I would say I have noticed poetically invisible hands kind of intervening in this dimension, not as a shape, but as space. There is a soul to space. Imagine all those people doing rituals to access divinity, being like, no way, the space is divine. You don't have to do anything to discover the nature of space. It's actually the opposite you do. The less you do, the more the space reveals what's moving in it. Anyways, back to the title. So it's kind of like this, where so far I'm looking at this for this episode, I'm looking through 4 angles. What is the best strategy for the individual body? What is the best strategy for the individual mind? What is the best strategy for the collective body? What is the strategy for the collective mind? The bizarreness of these is that the dimensions we find them in, so the individual body, it's as if this is one sector of one sector of human life we have in some sense explored and have come up with conclusions. I think most people also, it's like it's unavoidable. Like right now, whether I like it or not, there's like a sort of invisible mind moving my visible body. Regardless of how much I just say it's neurons moving in my brain, but it's like the organizational pattern for behavior is more than just a biological condition. It's as if this intelligence that we are has had the ability to not only separate itself from the world, but to then use that separation to reorganize the world. The reorganizing factor about consciousness suggests that it's as if there is programming from another dimension. It's like influence from another dimension. Imagine similar to, let's say you held a remote controller in your hand, the remote controller of a remote control car. And so imagine that remote control car is moving on, let's say it's moving like a distance of 100 meters away from you. Now imagine human consciousness was the remote control car. As far as the remote control car is concerned, it is being its intelligence. The remote control car is moving itself. But in actuality, it's the signal that is not where the remote control car is that is in some sense moving it. So it's another way of saying, this is very poetic, but it's as if our soul is using the mind as a remote controller to move the body. Now the idea is that the soul, or I shouldn't have said mind, I'll say it this way. Just like the actual intelligence that let's say you move this remote control car, or let's say it's a drone camera or something. Let's say you press a button, it rises into the air. Okay, let's say a drone camera. I think that's a cooler example, but so the signal for the drone to move came from somewhere that the drone wasn't. Okay, and it's kind of like the way the soul is moving the mind, or how the mind is moving the body, seems to be from a soul that is not in this world. This is the bizarre thing, because I could have also said individual mind, individual body, individual mind, individual soul, and then I could have said collective body, collective mind, collective soul. But when it comes to the idea of the soul, that's literally something that goes beyond an object and subject. So really it's the activation of the unknown. So right now, I mean, I've been through it a lot, through states where the unknown moves the known, and then the known moves the unknown, and the karma of these two are different. So this is the incredible thing, that how you move, how your attention moves in the moment, gives you a display of like from where the energy came. If I was to say, like, this talk I'm giving now, it's actually, is it from the energy of my body? Is it the energy of the mind? Or poetically, is it let's say a mysterious energy of the soul? I would say it's as if like a timeless version of you. The attitude and psychology, imagine, of the timeless version of you actually gives complete freedom for anything in time to happen. So it's as if, even though my body's energy is being used, and let's say mental energy is being used for me to say these words and all of this, the body and mind are being in activity, but poetically, because I have realized through meeting experientially the unknown, pretty much I found myself in such an unknown moment that my memory and imagination is like pretty much nothing can touch that unknown. We are left not witnesses of our own unknown life, but we are also witnesses of the collective unknown life. The collective unknown life is not just how, let's say, you feel about the world you're in, it's how the world feels about itself. These are the deeper dimensions of collective psychology that the idea of an advanced civilization really ushers in. For me, just this view that there's, let's just take the number of 8 billion human beings. So right now, as I'm giving this talk, there's 8 billion personalities. There's pretty much 8 billion biological entities, and each biological entity has a personality that is in some sense being animated in accordance to the journey through life they've had, and through the sequences and the types and versions of the brain. Right? People don't realize this, that a certain level of inner peace and happiness comes based on how you hold yourself every day. Think of this way, that every day is like a film that's being directed, and after that the brain will have access to this film. Our minds are actually a timeless, or any time a person remembers something, it's as if you are simulating a timeline where yesterday still exists as something visible. What does the intelligence in the moment yearn for? What sort of, how loud of a roar does intelligence want to have in its conscious life? Biological bodies, they are performance. They are performers, let's say on the stage of the periodic table. Our individual mind is really kind of like our own world that our consciousness finds itself in. The value of it is based on whether you use your mind or you just watch it. Like, I feel it's totally possible to live life in the passenger seat, you know, the whole lifetime, and it's also possible to live in the driver's seat. In order to be in the driver's seat, one needs to be capable of acknowledging all dimensions and then becoming mobile. So it's kind of like before you move, how much freedom are you seeing? How free are you before you move? It's kind of like the body wants to stick around. We ask why, because the mind wants to experience as long as it can, pretty much. The individual mind. The collective mind, to me, feels kind of like these inner worlds through the human being becoming interconnected. It's kind of like unconsciously nature is being everything, but consciously man has taken itself into a neutrality. Like right now, human consciousness is actually in a limbo state. What that means is limbo would be kind of like neither good, neither bad. It is neutral. It is absent of judgment or any value, right? And what's more remarkable is, like, why is our karma? Like, why are we experiencing our own karma? And at the same time, what is the point of us not realizing how our own karma is part of the karma of the universe? The game of life is pretty much see what you have. And most people think it's to just enjoy what you have, sure. But there's also, I would say, the epitome of gratefulness. You see, there's a gratefulness for physical things just being there. Then there is a gratefulness for opportunities of advancement. We have moved from the era, from Darwin's era of survival of the fittest, to Mr.Within's era of advancement of the most advanced. That's it. Our species has to come to terms with the notion that thinking of extinction and emptiness and the void and death, even though possible and presentable, it's boring. Non-existence is boring fundamentally to an existential creature. It's kind of like, what does energy do with itself? And it's like, I'm going to change the world. For me, I find that if we just take this remote control metaphor I was saying, where poetically the soul is in a remote control way controlling, let's say, using the mind as a signal to move the body. The subtitle where I say the soul is witness when a pure mind moves the body, that's another way of saying the remote control car or realizes that it needs to wait for a signal, so we use up the previous signal. It's another way of saying your past sense of self is being used as fuel or I shouldn't say fuel, but it's being used as firewood, for the glow of your present self. So really what it is we are absorbing our past senses of self to, in some sense, expand the illumination of the present self. In the Gnostic perspective on life, they had this view that what the soul is actually divine light. It is like truth, the light of truth within the individual. And the Gnostics perceived it that the purpose of life was to release this light of divinity. It's as if we are souls on earth. How often do we get the chance to be on earth, How often do we get the chance to be in a reality where certain dimensions of it are customizable? That's really what free will is. It's customizing the self. And really, there is an inner being and an outer being. The species has ignored the inner being, but hilariously, everything we are seeing is how our brain is happening. Like, take that in, guys. What that means is that light enter our eyes, and then that light, which is simultaneously, let's say, being a neural signal, translates into an image. The brain is taking light and making films for itself. This is some next level, activity in this part of the cosmos. It's hilarious. It's like human beings are looking for advanced intelligence at extraterrestrial, they're looking for the most advanced intelligence, not realizing they are it. Right? The person was looking, let me tell you something bizarre. The concept of God, simplified, can be said to be an inconceivable viewer, an inconceivable witness of everything. So God has created everything and is watching everything, right? Now, if the person asks themselves, what has been inconceivably watching me as myself? So the person's wondering about the nature of the soul, and the soul is pretty much your real eyes. That's the best way secular society can engage in. You're looking for a dimension where clarity is instant. Think of it this way, that would be like the discovery of the original earth through the original self, poetically. Sometimes entertaining the traditional idea of body, mind, soul. It's like 3 worlds. It's like 3 dimensions where each dimension is trying to control all the other dimensions. So it's another way of saying the body experiences its own existence and then wants to process everything, wants to reorganize or reorient everything to its initial existence. So it's as if there's a way where our bodies, there's nothing else other than me here, right? And then there's a view of our mind where the mind, in some sense, is like standing above the body. It's kind of like in New Age communities they talk about a higher self, or let's make it more elegant and say a greater self. So it's kind of like the mind is the greater self, the soul is the greatest self, and God is inconceivable. So God is not a self. Man is made in the image of God, but the image of God is man received. Man's brain acknowledges it, so it's man-made, right? So belief in any idea is kind of like a very it's like worshiping the brain. Like, there's a lot of people thinking they're worshiping God, but they're just worshiping their own brains, you know? Because God is not something that needs something from man. You see, that's a humanized mind that needs something from the human being. In religions, you know, it's remarkable that the view, a sort of attribute given to God, the concept of God, is that God is merciful, compassionate, you know, all-loving. And so a person wonders, you know, why a creator would see the suffering of its creation, you know? It's as if this is, I'm just saying it for the sake of its poetic value, but it's kind of like, did God want to see the creation of suffering? You see, it's like the question can become so remarkable, right, when we try to go beyond our own human archetype. This is really what philosophy is for. Right, people think like to be a philosopher means you gotta have an archive, you gotta pretty much, you know, live in a library. But I'll tell you, to be a philosopher means that you are not afraid of the most important questions, the most important, let's say, ontological questions. How your being is being structured, every person's eyes, you know, it's like so many people are going to workshops, like trying to find their writer's voice, not realizing their honesty to their own eyes is it. The question, what is the purpose of all personalities? It implies that there is a dimension where, like, from an individual perspective, every individual has to care for everybody, like, just to see how advanced that could get. And then there's, you know, let's say an angle from the collective vision, where it's as if, what is the purpose of space? To hold matter, and it comes back to space. So it's as if there is an individual life and if there is a collective life, it's so strange. I keep trying to, it's like my mind is attempting to simulate a version of reality where there is like the least, you know, ignorance of both the nature of how the inner realms happens and the outer realms. But really what it is that what do we want to move intelligence and therefore define it? So it's another way of saying, why are there 8 billion positions in nature where endless personalities could be generated? Imagine the simulation of yourself in one moment is like a piano key. And imagine the way the brain simulates senses of self. It has a melody. So to live as a human being is like being an instrument. It's like where the melodies are being heard by poetically other dimensions. This is why I'm saying that it's like the human species is in a performance mindset. You know, Shakespeare caught on to this. You know, and in Vedic thought, they caught on to this by saying that the play of the world was called Leela. Leela. This is a word that becomes real to people who discover that they have been an actor. They're like the nature of the brain simulating and us being that self. It's an act. I think that we can also bring forward the perspective of, is the moment, if is the intelligence in the present happening based on a past value system, or is it happening in accordance to a future destination? You know, it's so many people, religious people want to go to paradise, but what if we brought paradise to earth? I think indirectly all religious people are actually becoming servants of a divine reality, a transcendental reality. This is why I'm telling you guys, everything that spiritual people are experiencing now, it's going to become second nature in cyberspace for future generations. Give it like a couple hundred years. I don't know, some part of me feels like I don't know what's going to happen to everything I'm doing in this lifetime, but at the same time I have this feeling that because I have spoken about the future, these talks are intended for the future. It's as if they have a purpose to exist in the future. Because most people, most speakers, like, what can they do? To be a futurist means that you loved your world so much you wanted to know where it's going. That's the true meaning of a futurist. It's like, what is the energy of life for? This is the ultimate question. Is it just maintenance? Like in Vedic thought, they saw that pretty much three gods were governing the forces of nature, and they were Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. Like certain, this was like certain people lived through this view. And these three gods are like archetypes for pretty much the concept of creation, which is Brahman, maintenance, which is Vishnu, and then destruction, which is Shiva. These three gods were seen, and it's kind of like anything being created in the realm is like how a Brahman is breathing. Anything being maintained in the realm is how Vishnu is breathing, and anything being destroyed is like how Shiva is breathing. Do you know, it's as if like these are, it's like there are greater, what we think is the limitation of human psychological framework is in actuality like the macrocosm is considering the geometry of the microcosm. What we are ignorant of about ourselves, the world can see. What is the world? Ultimately, it can become a conscious memory. You know, the way I am, like if somebody says, Mr. Within, are you afraid of the future? I would say fear depends on the circumstance that arises, but at the same time, I am not identifying with just my individual life, you know? It's like, I don't know if it was, since childhood or since when, but a part of me knows how I'm being me in a way that it's kind of like second nature. It's as if space knew how to move a body in such a way that it was second nature to the space. Let's say that we were to give a purpose to the individual mind, okay? Now, the idea is that we have freedom to decide, but let's just wonder, like, what an individual freedom for the mind could be. An individual purpose. And now let's say the individual purpose of the mind is to be aware of what it is and what it was, and to in some sense use these two sources of, let's say, information and energy. Pretty much, I think the reason we are experiencing the present, the nature of the brain is like this, is because the brain wants to use the past. Do you understand? It's as if, like, imagine for a creature the concept of imagine. This is so hard to explain. It's like I'm trying to say, imagine your future self wanted to move your past self, but it wanted to do it in a way where your past self could realize the future self, so it would have to forget that it's from the future to be able to experience a present where it can use the past to realize it's in the future. You know, it's kind of like, believe it or not, it's hilarious. It's like our body's from the past, our mind is from the present, and our soul is from the future. But what the future of creatures in time is a singularity of intelligence, which is another way of saying the most advanced beings are not in the universe, they are being the universe. The most advanced state of our individual mind is to be the world. So it's kind of like the purpose of the individual body may be like, sure, do backflips before you die, you know? But at the same time, too much of an action movie reference, but but it's like the person understanding what can happen to the energy they're in. That's it. Like, it's like our individual life, we got to see our own victory, but what about the collective life, right? Like, all the world leaders, it's like they should make this rule: anybody who doesn't care about the collective advancement of all human beings on a rock in the middle of nowhere shouldn't run for politics. Like, they should make something like that, you know? Filters, right? Because this is what we see, this is what I don't see in the United Nations. You know, philosophers, psychologists, and historians. Like, imagine they each had a booth, right? It's as if there was an ethical filter on all the decisions being made. There was at some point, you know what it is? It's like human beings are accepting to be separate nations, but that's an acceptance of an abstract boundary. Now, why limit the abstract? Why limit the boundary to the nation, right? Like, ever since the human species got a taste of flight, the taste of being able to utilize three-dimensional space. You know, this is my really vision of, you know, let's say this is really what Civilization 2.0 is, but I'm like, we solve overpopulation by making sky cities, and then these sky cities would make us realize that the earth is not an ideological something that can be ideologically ideologically possessed. Because ideological possession, it just leads to brutality. Why? Because one part of nature is forgetting to go in accordance to all the parts of nature. That's really it. Why is there war? Because people don't care about the future. That's the issue. If we cared about the future so much that we, like, imagine we wanted to live in such an advanced civilization, or the human species wanted to build the most advanced civilization, we wouldn't have time for war. We would have to, fast forward to a pre-assumption that the world is already peaceful. Now we're trying to advance from like a simple state. Some people speak about the idea of a world government, and I was thinking about the impossibility of that. Right? What I mean by this is can one ideological system pass the test of time to such a degree that it can control, the concept of control is based on how one is familiar with the idea of control in their past, right? Because when a person wonders about what desires are actually how in the present you have noticed something familiar to the past which was pleasurable. Do you know? Sometimes, excuse me. And sorry guys, this was on mute. I was saying like some next level stuff and it was on mute. But I guess maybe I need to rephrase it. Excuse me. I was pretty much, pointing my attention towards how we are literally being attention in space. Like just like how we're being a body right now, wherever you are listening to me, your mind is being your whole moment. And once this is simply acknowledged, then it's as if you're poetically your tool set. Think of it this way. The concept of clarity is trying to have the explorer find his or her most authentic state. And every human being, just like we have freedom of speech, there's also freedom of, what do you call it? There's freedom of humanization and dehumanization. Like in the future, there might be people who they will identify with being like dolphins or lions or something. Imagine a person identifying as a penguin. Imagine a nightclub owner identifying as a penguin in the future. Like that's like dehumanized states of the moment animating as an individual. Pretty much it's like dehumanization is a big deal now, but for the future generations it's an inevitable chapter of human history where it's literally the responsibility of becoming conscious. That means not only we have a consciousness is like a lantern in our hand, but it's like the moment the light of our brain, pretty much what our brain is doing is giving us access to a world where our approach to it suggests the possibilities we find. You know what it is? I'm pretty much trying to use the idea of the future to balance out all of the suffering the human mind has created in accordance to the past. The past, on some level, there was the sage called Papaji. He says the past is past, as if like it's happened and it's like you've already tunneled through sectors of reality. This lifetime is another sector of reality, and the ability of the human mind to identify, and now I'm going to go towards talking about Plato's world of forms. There is a sort of freedom that surpasses human and, let's say, humanized and dehumanized archetypes of a conceptual entity. So what that means is like there's a level of to consciousness, or how the mind is being space, where its body gives it a privilege to use shape, and then ultimately when it has used all the variations of shape, it's like a shaped being wanted to be an infinite shaped being. And once it became an infinitely shaped being, it wanted to experience shapelessness. We are that phase of nature where shape has noticed its shapeless quality. That's really what awareness is. To study the nature of your awareness, it's as if you opened your eyes inside an Iron Man suit, and now you want to get to see how advanced this technology is. The potential of our DNAs is like how great the universe wants to be. For me, in the outer realms, that means in front of our eyes, the purpose of all personalities is to advance civilization and advanced communication, anything that has to do with the body as a technology needs to instantly go into check of advancement. Imagine everything in civilization had an advancement check, right? Imagine anything, like somebody was drinking orange juice, like some scholars had come and been like, what's the most advanced way to drink orange juice? And imagine a teleportation company could just teleport orange juice. Like you just held the orange juice bottle and the liquid just teleported into your stomach. Do you know? Like, I'm being playfully abstract, but what I'm saying is when we wonder about advancement, we don't ignore the future. An enlightenment that ignores the future is actually instilled inside a simulation of the past. So people have to be careful, because what oneness is what the mind is doing. And to be aware of how our mind is happening is really wisdom. What greater wisdom can we want? For me, every day I wake up, I feel the mysteries of the unconscious kind of like staring at me. It's kind of like, sure, God is watching, sure, people are watching, sure, angels, entities are watching, but what is there beyond the conceptual domain of human intelligence's activity? Because really, when you look at the human intelligence and the development of society and the use of a language, like a species use self-awareness plus language to, in some sense, build abstract worlds where the whole species could abide by, right? It's like some people you see in the youthful rebellion mindset where you're like, break the rules, or who was it? I remember reading a wisdom quote where somebody said it's like break the rules and then like reset them or something. But I'll tell you, in actuality, in order to exist is to accept certain rules and conditions that the mind is appearing in. I think anybody who listens to these Mr. Within talks long enough, and this is why I don't say you have to listen, it's just, these are talks where I think eventually I'm piloting people towards the language threshold. And what that means is, in order to have an advanced civilization, we need to have an advanced acknowledgement of all dimensions of human perception. All dimensions of human perception include the human DNA, and it's another way of saying every person's DNA is like a private version of the earth that the others can't see. So there are worlds behind our eyes, and these worlds have each like let's say geometrical algorithm, and so the act is kind of like to release 8 billion inner realms into the outer realms, and the greatest way we can do that is like the advancement I'm talking about. For me, it's not just like, okay, bodies moved around. It's like, imagine somebody does a backflip and you're like, okay, is that the most advanced physical thing we can do? And then you see, like, sure, that could be for the human being, let's say based on the gravity on Earth. But like, at the same time, we could say the most advanced thing a human being can do is become aware not of the observed, but of the observer. So it's like, I'm trying to get the most able beings in the universal sector to build the advanced civilization. Why? Because it is for everyone. You see, it's like an advanced civilization in a human context, or yeah, it's for all human beings, but in a cosmic context, it's as if we have cosmic, like hilariously cosmic street cred to hold, to uphold. Right, so in some sense, for me, it's not just about something that appears advanced to the human being, but something that is advanced in all dimensions. It doesn't mean like in the context of power, it would mean as if like, how would I say it? let's say if this whole talk was being filtered through an emotion of my own universal principle philosophy, I have realized that the human mind is not just alive, but it imbues what it sees with life. When a person, let's say, looks at a coffee cup and it's like, that's a coffee cup, that's like we have imbued subjective life into an object. Now the question for me, when the concept of advancement arises, it's like a question is like, who is advancing and what is the advancement? The who is advancing suggests the nature of human intelligence, which it is actually like our, how do I say? It's like our shape is being how we are human, but where we are knowing the shape of life is a space. It's like a state of space. Consciousness is a way that space holds the moment, or the moment is holding space. For me, it's like really, it's kind of like just fast forwarding to the purpose of knowledge, and the purpose of knowledge has always been to allow man to cope to cope with the unknown. The body will close its eyes. The mind will become the final sky. And the untouched soul never stopped smiling, like the inconceivable witness. That's really the ultimate freedom, when you realize the texture of life is that all the things that you're considering are physical reality are non-physically being kept by how the brain is happening. It's like when we see something, it's not just we're seeing what that is, we are seeing, it's like when we see an object, it's like we are actually seeing light plus brain. You know, it's a very simplistic way to talk about it, but if somebody says, Mr. Within, does enlightenment mean figuring out how the brain is translating light into us? And I'll be like, sure, yeah, close enough. It's a good question to wonder about. If the future was watching us, it's like the person's like, what did the past expect of now? What is now expect of now? And what is the future expect of now? Like, imagine in the future, everybody's an advanced being. So it's like, imagine the most advanced version of you. How would it look at now? And you'll see you instantly are the witness of the moment. I want to go into a quote tunnel, guys. These are quotes from this sage called Papaji. I think his actual name is Punjaji, but like, I'll read some of this guy's quotes. You know, this guy was by some considered to be a liberated being. Papaji says, whatever comes, let it come. Whatever stays, let it stay. Whatever goes, let it go. Papaji says, if there is peace in your mind, you will find peace with everybody. If your mind is agitated, you will find agitation everywhere. So first find peace within, and you will see this inner peace reflected everywhere else. You are this peace. Papa G says you are the unchangeable awareness in which all activity takes place. I was saying, like, saying this quote to an angry person would be like a hilarious moment of seeing truth subduing the anger. I think this is literally one of the best definitions of what consciousness is, the unchangeable awareness in which all activity takes place. It's also an incredible definition for the idea of soul. Papa G says that ocean of eternal peace is you. What is the difficulty that we suffer from? It is that we seek peace elsewhere and do not experience that we are peace incarnate itself. This is something very important for anybody who's a parent to realize, right? That the parent's personality is becoming part of the information archive of the child's mind, the archive of archetypes. Papa G says, look within. There is no difference between yourself, self, and guru. You are always free. There is no teacher. There is no student. There is no teaching. Papa G says when you stop thinking, you are no longer imagining things that are not true. You know, just like they tell a young kid not to touch an object in a museum, like these enlightened yogis were telling people don't touch the idea of yourself so that you can realize where it's happening and then it moves on its own. I'm telling you, it's like automation is not just the future of, like, you know, the outer realms, it's also the future of the inner realms to some degree. It's all about how long, like if the human biological position was a sort of astronaut suit, let's say in the space of the cosmos, it's as if every astronaut, based on their own poetically, their ancient, based on their endurance of their eternal eyes, like, we choose how long we use what is here, to some degree. Anyways, I'll keep going with the quote. Papa G says, when you stop, I read that, he says, now is the time to have a direct introduction to this moment. This moment is free of time, of mind, of any notions. Introduce yourself to this moment. You know, guys, I'm not married, but I was thinking if I was, and instead of my wedding vows, I was just reading like enlightenment quotes. Sorry guys, just silly idea, silly tangent. Anyways, to keep going, now is I read that Papa G says, let your will burn in this fire so that it takes you nowhere else. Let yourself be burned in this fire of eternity, love, and peace. Don't be afraid of this fire. It is love itself. This desire for freedom is the fire of love. Papa G says don't cough and you're enlightened. I'll keep going, guys. Papa G says detach yourself from those things which are not permanent and rest in that which is always permanent. Papa G says, surrounded by nothingness, you have to do nothing. You have to do nothing to be who you are, nothing at all. Papa G says, when you know that you're meditating, it is not meditation. Yeah, because that sort of knowing, it's like when a person thinks about, am I meditating right? Like that question doesn't make sense. You know, because it's all the exploration of your own mind for the first time ever. You know, imagine you get to meet others for the first time in this lifetime, but you're whoever you are, you're also meeting your own mind in every moment for the first time. Had a vision, guys, that in the future, maybe, who knows, in the future, I became a bit silly and my attention drifted. Honestly, it's just, what do we do with our sight? And that strategy becomes our personality. Papa G says, you have to simply become aware of the movement of the mind which begins this endless trouble. Papa G says nobody wants to work, not even the breath wants to work. Papa G says if you see the illusion, you're enlightened, but if you think that you're enlightened, you're in the illusion. Papa G says one is always free and one is always alone, the mind is only dreaming. What an incredible idea, you know? That means it's like, due to because there isn't an emotional freedom found in our solitude, you know what it is? This is the beautiful point in human history where every human being can't ignore what they mean to everything else. Such a remarkable time, you know, it's like for the first time, just like they say the planets have aligned, it's like the visions of our inner earths are aligning to an advanced outer earth. Pretty much it's like the dance of minds. Every generation, especially it started in 2020, I termed it the era of advanced communication. We're living at that point in history where if we wanted to advance all technologies, language and the use of language in the mind would be like an advanced technology. You know, knowledgeable people believe in language, smart people study it. The language to reality, you know. Just like we have, let's say, letters of the alphabet, each have being connected to a sound. We pretty much connected lines, recognizable symbols to sounds, and we're using them all the time. we're using sound to move symbols, which then these symbols move the images in each other's minds. Like, that's what communication is. Like, right now, this video is being live streamed in the outer realms, but I'm also live streaming my inner realms into the outer realms, you know. You know, it's like, who was Mr. Within? Someone who was live streaming his inner realms into the outer realms. It's an act of intent in mind. Ultimately, I ask myself, where does a value system come from? Because if every system is working in accordance to certain set values, it's like there's a hidden geometry to everything that we see. That hidden geometry is in a realm where the idea of the human being, like, this is why people don't, like, you know, they see let's say they personify a pet, right? But you can't personify like an electron. I've never seen a scientist be like, wow, that's such a cute electron, you know. Right? So we don't personify the geometry at some point because it's too simple to be animate. We're honestly like a creature. What science is like a three-dimensional being using a two-dimensional technology to realize it's three-dimensional, but the two-dimensional technology can never know it's three-dimensional, you know. It's pretty much like, how does the spirit of the moment move as your eyes? And then you'll see why I speak of the pilots of consciousness. We are actually pilots. And we're piloting our attention, we're tunneling through, let's say, the brain's simulations. You know, the legend of the advanced humanity. That's Mr. Within's gift, you know. How an advanced civilization is the future's birthright. You know, it's like not ask what you deserve, ask what your world deserves in the future, right? For me, like, let me tell you, in the future they might discover, let's say, time travel, but then I think nobody will use time travel machines. Why? Because the same unknown capacity, it's like what you can find in the past, you know, it's also like, what could you find in your future? Imagine we reach a point in human history where every child, like, imagine every educational system, it's like after they've taught a class, right, they take the child outside into like a, let's say, football field or somewhere where there's grass and nature, and they tell the children, you know, before you can graduate, just put your palm on the planet and acknowledge that this is the home of your species. If every child has this acknowledgement, it's as if they're, you know, it's like the hope of humanity is the greatness of now, is the greatness of the potential of the past that deserves to be seen now. Like, there's something that the species deserves and can do which it's not doing. And that's building an advanced civilization. We're not building, you know, we're not advancing civilization enough. Why? Because people are trying to fit into, let's say, the geometry of a normal reality, not realizing that it's as if everything is changing. People don't even know what they want because there's things that haven't existed yet which they can want. Do you know? What is creativity? The pursuit of a transcendental object that becomes the future. You're fascinated with not just what you see, it's like you experience the dimensions of the observed, you experience being the observer, and then it's as if the humble soul, you know, let's say, simply just waited to see what else the cosmos had to reveal. But what the cosmos reveals is that space is imbued with rhythmic intelligence. So really, the greatest question on what is reality is not a question, it's just a wonder, a state of fascination of a dynamic multidimensional moment. So it's like the person's thinking of all the different ideological dimensions that their intelligence has created as, let's say, the archives of knowledge. For me, the brain is like, right now we're living at a time where men don't carry a sword and shield with them, right? But back in the day, they used to carry swords and shields, and to me, I feel like, okay, nobody's carrying a giant chunks of metal around, but at the same time, it's kind of like I see the mind replacing that feeling of having a sword and shield, as if your mind can in moments be used to be piloted forward. Like the mind can be used like a sword, right? But the mind can also be used like a shield. And based on what the soul finds worthy, it's like, its hands move the mind. We're like an unknown soul, equipped through the duality of mind to, in some sense, discover the nature of a supreme contextual singularity. So it's as if after you have realized the whole universe as being alive in one moment, what then? It's just the potential that's already deserves to activate. Like pretty much right now, one of the hardest problems, I shouldn't say hardest, but one of the most fascinating problems to solve right now that would contribute to the human species is, what is the potential of every moment of mind, and what can happen to this potential? It's as if human beings are growing on Earth out of nowhere. And so what is the purpose of the beauty of being a creature in space? Like, to be in the space-time continuum, it's literally like you're swimming in a world that was here before you were, right? It's literally like the ball, like, how can I tell you? It's like just like the sky changes color, the moment presents minds that come and go. You see, it's just how soon can the species accept that it is instantaneously free? The species is trying to be free to such a degree, it's not wondering, if we were free, what would reality be like? And it's like someone hearing the idea of law of attraction, but at the same time having the idea of honesty. Like, imagine you want to, be an honest person that is into the new age idea of the law of attraction. Right, so if you are truly honest, it's kind of like this Taoistic framework where when you stop being a self, the universal self remembers itself poetically. So right now as I'm speaking, because I'm speaking, the idea of my name and the idea of this online alias, let's say Mr. Within, I'm using all of these. They're just pretty much like projections. So imagine when I'm giving these talks, I'm opening up, what do you call it? Just like Tony Stark, and in I think it was the third movie, or in the movie where he has this interface where Jarvis, this AI, is allowing him in a holographic way by moving his fingers, moving holograms. I feel if there was a visual appearance to my inner realms, it would be as if I am opening up worlds, and then I'm wondering about their geometry if a dynamic rhythm was implemented into the moment. It's energy, ultimately. Personality is how energy is moving. Energy is moving before the personality, so how can the human being ever understand its world? The world was here before the human being could notice itself to create an idea for the world. There's a mystic quote from this Persian poet called Attar of Nishapur. This guy was alive, I don't know, like 700, 800 years ago. He has this quote. I'm going to read it for you. He says, "The home we seek is in eternity. The truth we seek is like a shoreless sea, of which your paradise is but a drop. This ocean can be yours. Why should you stop, beguiled by dreams of evanescent dew? The secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams." Turn to what truly lives, reject what seems. Which matters more, the body or the soul? Be whole, desire and journey to the whole. And it's another way of saying, if in life there's a spectrum, like all you can eat buffet of decisions you can make, the most advanced decision would be a decision for the whole moment. It's like the most advanced state is everything is included in the most advanced state. An advanced civilization, it's like how a collective archetype is constantly readjusting itself to the greatest potential of what the human being deserves. Imagine, like we woke up one day and we realized governments have become like compassionate saints, right? And suddenly it was like the quality of life. Is it left to numerical abstraction? Sometimes I think, it's as if people are working for value systems, which in reality are abstract positions. Let's say in a time span of 10,000 years. Imagine, that's too far. I'll say it this way. Imagine, in a parallel version of the Earth, thousands of years from now, there was a very intense multidimensional confrontation. So imagine the species, before getting to realize its own multidimensional collective planetary mind, right? Before realizing that, let's say an extraterrestrial invasion happens, but an invasion of minds. So it would literally be like the will of the free will is shifting, right? So it's as if we wanted to if we wanted to truly have an advanced civilization, an advanced civilization is, in some sense, wondering about the most advanced resolution, right? It would be kind of this way, where the outer experience of an advanced civilization would be geometrically fascinating, and the inner experience of an advanced civilization would be kind of like you are, because the whole moment is, it's as if you are the advancement of the civilization. An advanced civilization would be another way of saying the masterpiece of this universal cycle is being built. It's kind of like, what painting does the individual want to draw, and what painting does one soul want to draw, and then it's as if what grand painting are 8 billion souls drawing. Imagine the soul was an artist, I feel like I should go back to the Papaji quotes. Papa G says, nobody wants to work. Not even the breath wants to work. Papa G says, if you see the illusion, you're enlightened. But if you think that you're enlightened, you are in the illusion. One is always free, and one is always alone. The mind is only dreaming. Oh my god, I read these. Okay, I'll start from the bottom of the list. Papa G says, thoughts are impediments to seeing your own face. Don't give rise to any thought and discover who you are. Papa G says, find where the ego rises from, and it will disappear. Papa G says, understanding and not understanding are all in the scheme of ignorance. Just the realm of the mind. This is not learning. This is your birthright. You cannot study to be what you are. You do not need to understand in order to breathe. Papa G says, what is the purpose of human life? To return home. Papa G says, if you address the mind with who are you, it will disappear. He's pretty much saying when you wonder about who you are, you're going to discover how your intelligence is being present before your personality moves. Papa G says the way to live a happy, beautiful life is to accept whatever comes and not care about what does not come. Papa G says, keep quiet, don't touch the thoughts, let them be. Papa G says meditation is to effortlessly turn the mind toward that energy which energizes the mind. Papa G says, look here and know who you are. Instantly you will find freedom. And this suffering hitchhiking from womb to womb will instantly stop. The only way is to look within. Papa G says, if you identify with what comes and goes, you will be unhappy. If you identify with what is permanent and always there, your happiness itself. So it's another way where Papa G is saying, like, for those who truly want happiness, it's kind of like you filter it out through wondering, okay, what's a permanent? What is there? What's an unconditional position of the moment? That means what is a permanent state of awareness? Wow. You know, it's like the mind that wanted to build an advanced civilization realized it's omnipresent. Like, can you imagine? This is why I'm saying it's an honor to be a human being. It's one of the most incredible opportunities to see what humanity can be. You know, the more the person loves the world, the more they actually care for how its future will happen. You know, many let's say, units of society. Pretty much human behavior is motivated with individual, let's say, revelation. I'm saying, like, we should all be fascinated with the collective revelation. Our body gives a sort of ability to move, and the mind gives a sort of ability to move. honestly, when you realize attention is an unknown presence, the whole moment is being present in an unknown way. It's like after that, it's like post-freedom context of being activity. So imagine before the soul moved the body, it was conducting it through a pure mind. And a pure mind doesn't mean it's like we clone everything to one ideology, but what it means is that who are you when there is no effort to be anyone? And that is completion itself. Like space doesn't die, an eternal being never had fear. It's like eyes that were open before the world could close, you know? What is the purpose to all personalities? To replace the search for truth the search for ideological truth was translated, or let's say changed, to what is the most advanced potential of the moment. Destiny becomes how far our eyes saw this world. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. Rise, mankind, rise.